or down, doesn't matter.
Let's go down.
Okay.
Let's go down. I need it for this. Yes.
No. Yep.
Good morning, everyone. I'll let those filter out as they need to, and we'll get started here. My name is Kurt Sollenberger. I'm the chair of the Resources Commission, which is basically in charge of the building and grounds. I'm going to start this conversation by thinking back to a time when I was sitting in a Resources Commission meeting, there we go, sorry, with Carol Kreider, who was then our chair, and she said, well, we're going to put a tent out in the yard for the whole summer, and it's going to cost $6,000. And I said, you're what? That is the dumbest thing ever. And I was wrong. It actually worked out really well. We made great, that was during our construction project and probably COVID overlapping there at some point. So it was a great outdoor space where, yeah, that we made really good use of. And I had to eat my words in that regard. At that point, we started thinking about something a little more long-term on resources. I guess we put it on our wish list as far as starting to think about a pavilion out in the yard out here that we could use for multiple purposes. We, at some point, I went around to a bunch of area churches and over to Lidditz, over to Annville, just to look at some other churches' pavilions and what they had done. They ranged from very rudimentary, concrete pads with a roof and 4 poles to, enclosed structures with kitchens and bathrooms. And so I guess it was last year, we started to talk with Jeff Mummau a little bit more about, Jeff's a local contractor and our construction consultant on this whole thing. And he at some point started to put together some sketches. Some of you may have seen them. This information has been out there. We had a Sunday school session last fall, and there has been some information in the emails, but we thought this was maybe a better way to reach some people who may not have seen any of that information yet. Jeff put us in touch with, 20 years ago, we would have just had Jeff build it and it'd be done by now. But that's not the way the world works anymore. So Jeff put us in touch with a local landscape architect to start working through some of the questions that we needed to answer regarding how this would all work. We had a meeting with the borough and the borough engineer and solicitor and just talked about there's water runoff situations, there's sewer, there's, breaking into the street to do these things, all these kinds of things. And so Dave helped, we hired him to help us lead through the initial process and give us a feasibility plan. At the same point, Jeff was making some sketches of what this would look like, and we're not looking for something that has to be too crazy fancy, but we wanted it to be solid and something that could be used for many purposes. Among those, let me backtrack a little bit. We also, at the point, we had 2 deeds we have the main church lot, and then we have a separate lot over here to the side, and we did what's called a deed of consolidation to put them together. Without that, we can't put an accessory building on that lot, and so that's what this would be called. So we have already finished doing that, and that was something that actually would have been done anyway had we done our big construction project that didn't quite work out as planned. We envisioned this space to be used for picnics, meetings, small group, Sunday school classes, youth events, family gatherings, reunions, worship, Sunday breakfast, coffee, Bible school, weddings, funerals, daycare and nursery school events. We could even rent it to the community. if that's the direction we wanted to go with it. So we were tasked at I guess it was the board retreat. That's earlier this year, as to how this fits in with our vision as a church. And one of the tasks was to invite young families, all people, but especially young families. It could I don't even think we've thought of all the things we could use it for, but we share space with the daycare and nursery school, so there are times we're not able during the week, especially, to use our own building. So this gives another space. At some point, we were told that in order to move this forward and get an actual price that we can bring to the congregation, that we needed to have a registered architect draw up plans so we could put this out to bid. And at that point, we talked to a couple local architects and ended up hiring Lisa Clemens' firm, Murphy and Dittenhafer, out of York. And we're very pleased with where they've taken us in the process. We've had our initial meeting or two, and so what you see is not final, but we're getting pretty close. But we wanted to make sure that we had one other opportunity for people to voice ask their questions, voice their concerns, put in their input. So I'm going to hand it over to Lisa now, and she's going to go through her slides and explain where we are in the process, and then we'll open up for questions afterwards. Thanks for sticking around.
So one thing Kurt forgot to mention that he told me was, after they took the tent down, everybody said, "When's the tent coming back?" People really liked that outdoor space. So bear with me, I've got 3 things and 2 hands. We started working on this maybe a month ago at Murphy and Dittenhafer Architects, and I'm an interior architect there, and we have 2 registered architects working on this with us. One is very technically oriented, and the other one is super creative and very detail oriented. So I think we have a fabulous team on this project. This is the selected site plan that Jeff and his team and Kurt came up with. They looked at 2 different ways to kind of angle it. Let me see if I can point at it a little better here. So this is right here, the porte-cochere where we drive in, and it would be located right across the driveway, and it would be more or less somewhat parallel to the driveway right behind the existing memorial garden. And the playground is over here. This is just a couple of shots to show you, kind of the location. You could walk straight out over through the trees, and that's the location where it would be, or in behind the memorial garden. All of you are a little more familiar with this space. I put these together mostly for the architects who hadn't seen it yet. Here's a couple of precedent images of some other pavilions in our area. I think the one on the left is Anvil, and the one on the right may be Camp Sotara. Am I right about that? The bottom one is Camp Sotara. And there's a lot of different ways that this can be approached. This is the proposed plan. We took Jeff's plan, adjusted it a little bit. Essentially what you have is a gathering area that opens with 3 garage doors on either side, or in bad weather, those doors can be kept closed. Windows facing the playground, and then there's a large kitchen with a big serving window, and 2 restrooms, space for water heater and utilities, and an inside storage area for tables and chairs. On the far left, what you see is the side closest to the memorial garden, and there would be a concrete walkway there, probably not concrete, it would be more a permeable space, I believe. It's about 7 feet wide, I think. Wide enough that we could put some grills there for grilling. And the kitchen windows seem to be at a perfect location to be passing meat in and out. into the serving area. Whether or not there would be a fence is yet to be determined. And I'll walk through these rather quickly, and then we can always go back if there's any questions. One of the things the architect really looked at was how can we design this so that it fits with the current church. Obviously, it doesn't need to have all the classic details. And one of the things Patrick found in his search, he's pretty thorough actually, he found our Germantown church at the bottom and used that for some inspiration. One of the things we had talked about briefly, and still I believe is an ongoing conversation, is what the roof pitch needs to be, because there are a few people in the congregation, probably more than a few, who would like to see solar at some point put on the roof, but that is not part of this initial project. And Patrick did these drawings to essentially show that that roof pitch of 6 by 12 is still pretty perfect for solar. The 29 degrees in our area can go down to like 26, which is what a 6 by 12 is. And then he took that one step further and put the model into Google to kind of show, you know, where the shadows would be. And basically, you can look at that and say, okay, on the south side of the church, you're always going to have sun. There will be some trees, but for the most part, you've got some nice bright sun on that orientation. The other thing that we explored, and we're showing you just kind of where we landed. We went through quite a number of different iterations with Jeff and Kurt. But one of the things to decide was, you know, what do we want that roof structure to be like, specifically on the inside? And there are 3 different types of trusses that we could use. The one on the right gets a little more pricey. The 2 in the middle are a bit more moderate and kind of a standard on the left. And where we left it was, we would use the scissor trusses, which are the open ones in the middle, above the gathering space so that you have a nice high ceiling in there, and use the flat trusses over the kitchen and the restrooms. And that kind of was a nice way to get the height in there without overdoing the cost. Whoops. One of the big but one of the big considerations, of course, is what those garage doors look like. You know, you can just put a standard garage door with no windows at all. You can put garage doors that have just a strip of windows. Where we landed, and everybody was in agreement, is to put glass doors is going to be much more inviting and interesting and leave a lot of light in even when those doors are closed. And the ones on the top are the ones that are drawn into the models that you'll see. So this is just an exterior rendering of, if you're driving in the driveway and the memorial garden is on your right-hand side, this is the orientation that you would see of the building. We did keep the kitchen, you know, on that far side or the close side so that you can easily take things in and out. You can pull up and carry things into the kitchen. If there's a funeral meal going on and you have a group over in the gathering space, you can bring things in and out the back door and not feel like you're going through the gathering space. The 2 windows on the front to the right of the double doors, those are actually bathroom windows, and they seem a little large for the bathrooms, but we decided that to kind of keep the integrity of the entire building, they really look nice, especially coming from that angle, and they can be windows much like these that you can't see in. There's different ways we can handle that. This is a view, kind of if you went a little bit further or you're walking back from the playground, that you might see. And here's just kind of a bird's eye view. And then one of the things that Patrick brought to the table was the idea of using a rosetted window instead of just a vent up at the top to kind of echo the Germantown feel. We explored a lot of different ways to bring in the architecture of the church, everything from the portichère to columns to a covered walkway, and decided it really takes everything a little further expense-wise than anybody's prepared to do right now, but a covered entrance is something that could always be added later. And all of those details could be added. Slide. Ah, yes. So I'll leave this one up if there's any questions, if anybody would like to make some comments. That's what we're here for this morning.
So before anyone approaches it, the question is always of cost. We have been asked this question, and this would not be a construction costs are high, so it would, if we build a solid building like we anticipate, it's going to cost a good amount of money, and that's why we're going where we are with trying to get construction bids so we can present that to you. As far as ways that we've talked within our commission and with the board, this would probably be a combination of some sort of fundraising effort, along with use of some endowment funds, I guess the facilities fund in that regard. And I know that the L word in this congregation is looked down upon as far as borrowing money, loan, but you know, I guess we really feel that this is a worthwhile project, and while there are some obstacles to get there, we'd love to have your support. So, questions over here, Glenn.
Did you consider including a fireplace or an outdoor fire pit space that would make this a little more inviting free space?
The question is, did we consider adding a fireplace or some sort of outdoor fire pit area? We did consider it. I'm not sure. Another L word, liability. Fireplace, fire pits. Anvil has a fireplace, I believe. Camp Sotara, it looked like they did too. At this point, I don't think our plan here has that in mind. It could be added. We sort of envisioned that the space between those far windows toward the playground to be like if you needed to put screen up there, you know, if you're going to have a meeting of some sort, that would be where your natural fireplace would be if we do that. And I guess there's nothing saying we couldn't do that and also, you know, still use that as a presentation area. So we have discussed it. We didn't really get any farther with that.
One of the other things that was talked about quite a bit is whether or not this should be an all-season building. And right now we're looking at it as a building that could be occupied in probably all but 3 months of the year. But again, it's something that could be changed up, if not now, in the future. And those are the things that we want to kind of take into consideration. We did not get into any exterior finishes yet to show you any of that, but all of that kind of figures in to some decisions and confirmations that we received today.
Rafi.
For accessibility, how are people able to access both of the doors? Are we putting in like concrete or a pathway?
There would be a walkway leading from the driveway. Most likely something impervious, like pavers of some sort. Or brick walkway. I'm not exactly sure, but yes, it would be accessible as far as that. Rick?
Combining the needs in this construction, how much do we have for future expansion? Is that limited? Does this limit us campus in terms of green space and what we can build on?
Future expansion of the
Impervious versus impervious. Like combining the needs gave us enough.
There is plenty. We're not. I think we're well within limits as far as impervious. As what the area we're covering, if that's what, I don't believe as far as, there are many rules. Once you start to get bigger, there's all kinds of stormwater management plans which cost tens of thousands of dollars to create, and so the more space you take, the more, you know, the higher up in that realm you go. But so I don't think we really had thought any, I mean, this would be as far as, I'm not sure I'm totally understanding, expanding that, more building in that area. Is that what you're asking about?
Church itself, is that?
Right.
Is that limited to any future?
Yeah, I don't believe that would affect that area at all if that were the case.
This particular building right now is designed at 40 feet by 80 feet, which was the intention that we were given from the church to kind of keep it to that amount of square footage. It could expand one way or another, but it was important to us to kind of start out in a realistic footprint that we felt could be added onto later, or but would meet all of those needs.
Jason.
I could really imagine that one of the uses here will be with families, and I would expect the playground to be used probably in conjunction with this when it's being used. So I do appreciate those windows that are on that side, but I would just name that will be an important aspect, that if there are individuals in the building, that they're going to want to look out and be able to see kids that potentially their children playing on the playground. So I think that's important.
Vida.
I'm thinking, having dealt with so many funeral meals over the years, the most that we could seat at tables in our current fellowship hall is 200. Was any thought given to how many tables, how many people could we serve in that gathering space?
Jeff, one of your plans had, do you want to come up here or not really? 180, 150? Probably 150-ish. It would depend a little bit on how you configure tables. I mean, if we're doing round tables, if we're doing long rectangular tables, I guess we're envisioning a mixture of both.
You'd also have the opportunity to put some tables outside when the weather's nice, but inside you would have a seating capacity of 150. And the reason I took the mic was to just address the kitchen a little bit. One of the things we talked about in the kitchen is making sure we don't cross that line into commercial kitchen. So the kitchen at this point would be very limited to a 3-part sink, a counter with, as Jeff said, plenty of plugs that don't blow the breakers for crock pots. And then again, that's the sort of thing that if we decided to take it to the next level at another point in time, we could do that. But it's not in the plans now to have stoves in there or ovens.
Oh, I thought we were going to have a stove in there. That's a minor detail, not necessarily something like downstairs, but just a regular, right. Yes, sir.
I think some of the functionality you may be looking for might involve using a caterer coming in to deliver food. Would you have access to get a catering van or something to the facility?
Not to drive straight up to it. Everything would have to come in through the walkway. I mean, I guess theoretically you could drive around the building and drive right up to one of the garage doors in the back and unload things. It's probably more than that, but it's, yes, John.
I love it. We've been talking about this ever since we had the tent up here, about how wonderful it would be to have enclosed space, and we wouldn't have to schlep the tables and chairs back and forth into storage. My one comment is if we decide to make it a 4-season building, I think 6 glass garage doors are going to make it difficult.
From an energy perspective. Right. Right. Yeah, these are things, I mean, concerned if we make it a 4-season, if it's a 3-season building with limited heat and no air conditioning, if the having 6 garage doors is going to let out a lot of, I mean, which it would. But I think we were trying to, I mean, you can also just go with, I mean, we could go in so many different ways. This is just the way a lot of these were, we were trying to open, and if we have the garage doors open.
They have changed the construction of glass doors like this tremendously. So it's kind of amazing the energy retention that you can get even with a glass door if the correct ones are selected. Obviously, a 4-season door is going to run a little bit more than a 9-season door, but that's another consideration.
Yes. Yeah.
I can't, I'm really bad with orientation, so when you say it's going to be here and here, how close are these barbecue grills to the memorial garden? And maybe they're at opposite ends.
There would be a the rain garden, which would be between the, so that's basically a planted area that were for your water runoff rather than just having a retention area, or so that it would be your building, and then there would be an area for grills to the left, the very left side of the pavilion, and then there'd be the rain garden and then the memorial garden, that row of trees going around. So there'd be a substantial space in between there. Nancy.
Doors limit activities that youth could do, like Foursquare or physical activity maybe in person breaking?
Possibly. I believe they'd probably be pretty tough, but I'm not sure you want to be having, you know, I would guess, yes, they could. I mean, I believe that, I believe that they're pretty strong, you know, glass, but yeah, you probably don't want to be throwing baseballs in there. But yeah, I imagine things like Foursquare. Craig Coble really thought we need pickleball courts. And I thought if we really want to tick off the neighbors, you know, we could add some pickleball courts in there, or one. Yes, Jeff.
So the garage doors, if you went with the glass garage doors by code, they have to be tempered glass.
Right.
All right. So that means if they're broken, it's a gazillion pieces, not 5 shards.
Jeff just said that they have to be tempered glass. Donna.
I just want to voice that I was thinking it was going to be more of a pavilion, just like a typical pavilion with open, where you would just have the posts and you could see the kids and you could, you know, you couldn't use it in certain kinds of weather, but it would be a shield from the rain, be a lot less expensive, maybe have the bathrooms, because I assume everybody, the child care center and everybody has trouble with not having bathrooms, but I'm sorry to see it becoming a much more of a building, expensive, upper class kind of pavilion.
It is, and we did, Donna's saying she likes the idea of just a much simpler pavilion, an open pavilion. And we did, like if you've been over to Lidditz where the new playground is, they have just a wide open pavilion with picnic tables. And we thought about that, and we went so far as to get a couple years ago, we got a price on something like that, and I believe it was it was under $100,000 to do that, and we could do that. I believe with having, I guess our hope was that we could use it for many, many more things this way, and yes, will it cost more? Substantially more, it will. But having an open pavilion also presents problems as far as anyone using it whenever they like. I mean, from time to time, we have people camping out in the memorial garden and just sleeping. I mean, not that that's, you know, that is what it is, but I think we're hoping to have more of a controlled space, and by having it a building that you can keep locked, we can control that.
A lot of the discussion I heard Donna had to do with the fact that whenever there are funeral meals, so often during the week, we can't access the church downstairs. So a lot of the thinking behind this was, how can we use this as many months of the year as possible, be able to provide those meals in a gathering space when we don't have access to the rest of the church?
I guess, Donna, I'm sorry, Liz, 1 second. When we started this, we could just do a bare bones situation, but then we're thinking, well, I've heard for years about having, we talked about having another fellowship hall when we were talking about our big construction project and having additional space. And when you add a kitchen and bathrooms, that's the big cost, obviously, because it brings a whole new variety of questions and problems and expenses. But I think we just decided that we didn't want to go, Lisa's firm actually we have drawings that have porches. I mean, we've tried to keep this relatively simple, but yeah, construction costs have not gone down, so it will be more costly. Liz, sorry.
About moving air. Garage doors obviously will let air in, but how about air that's stuck in there if the garage doors have to be down? Will your trusses support ceiling fans that are similar to this?
The question is regarding movement of air, open doors versus possibly ceiling fans. I'm not sure we had really talked about that.
No, but it would, no, we didn't talk about that. But the structure would certainly be able to support any sort of fan situation. Whether or not you decided to condition it further is kind of something that we would sort of have to know as we're thinking about the structure itself.
Yes, Ken.
Just so we don't lose sight of annual operating costs, whether they're de minimis or not de minimis, we should probably have a 5-10-year plan for operating costs if we construct this building and so forth. Too many times, people construct a building and they fund it, but then they forget about operating costs. And,
right.
What you're looking at down the pike and so forth, you have it covered by your operating budget for the church. So don't lose sight of that. The other thing, recently I was over at the Brickerville Fire Department at a reception for a first cousin who passed away. And the fire department had a full kitchen, but the fire department decided it's time to close the kitchen. So they sort of gave up on the full kitchen, and if you want to have something, you have to cater. In other words, have somebody bring the food in and cater, whatever event is being held in the building and so forth. But that was just because, they just decided it was time to give up on that full kitchen.
Ken's concern from the Finance Committee is 5 to 10-year operating cost plan, which we do understand. And that's part of the decision making is how far do we could, to subsidize the budget, we could rent it out to outside groups. Obviously that brings a whole nother operating element into it that we may not be set up to do right now as far as a facilities person or someone to manage that. But yeah, as far as the kitchen, I think we're thinking a pretty basic kitchen. Mostly would just be for, picnic type things and crock pots and anyway. Right. Carol.
I'm concerned about your storage space. And what are you going to store, what needs to be stored? Because we run into that here in Fellowship Hall.
Right.
We do it as
Carol's concerned about the storage space and is it enough? Jeff had measured, I believe, the space that we have, the tables and chairs stored in downstairs in the Fellowship Hall closet right now, and sort of used that as a guideline. We weren't sure exactly if everything would have to be stored all the time. You could have it totally open, or you could leave some tables out for general use and store part of the tables, but I believe he had in there enough storage to accommodate that if they're on the rolling carts.
Jeff had 160 square feet in there, and this is 180, so it's actually a little bit more. And the one thing that we were told is, we'd not be trying to store grills in there. We would not be trying to bring any exterior storage into this building because we already have an exterior storage facility.
Sitting around that table with coffee and how that relational sense of community can happen within this community.
Yeah, I think I would envision like on a Sunday morning like today, we would come in and we'd have the doors open and people would be meeting in there and we could have coffee there, you could have a Sunday school class there or whatever. And yeah. So I agree, yes. Ken?
When you speak of a pavilion, it doesn't, in my mind, look like your image there. That looks more like an 18th century Roman meeting.
Well, I think we added a round window for you as homage to the Germantown Church. I thought if I can get Ken Cryer on board, no, just joke. You're right. This is a substantial building. It is not. I mean, I think we started out. We started from a tent, and I started looking at basic pavilions, and then we started thinking of all the different things that this could be used for, and thought, well, if it's a little more substantial building with a kitchen and bathrooms, then it opens it up to those other uses. So yes, it is. This is a little. Yeah, I guess calling it a pavilion at this point may be a little. Yeah. Bit of an understatement. Yes, Pat.
I have a concern with the weather that we have now being a lot warmer and stuff. I really wish we would be looking at an all-season building, one that could be used all the time. You're going to have situations where we just had a more colder winter. I'm just thinking it would be nice to get the price. Not maybe do it, but get the price of what it would cost with ceiling fans, maybe even a little AC,
Yeah, I think where we started at was that we're trying to keep it a little more minimalist, and so that adds a whole nother element if we're going there. But I understand, your rationale. Sure.
Have you thought about renting space when you said other groups, even to family in the church?
Yeah, we envision this as something that the church could use, church families could use for whatever family reunions and gatherings. We, talked about renting it out, but that, like I said, that's a whole nother ballgame. Yeah, I mean, I guess we hadn't gone so far as thinking about renting I guess there could be a nominal fee. I think we're hoping that if church would support it, that the people that are members of the church could use it, and at a nominal cost, maybe.
Correct, but I think for family reunions in this church, there is a slight fee for it.
It depends. Not always. We try. For the congregation, we don't normally ask. So long as you set up and clean up after yourself, we're okay with that.
I just wanted to make one comment as Lisa, the member of this congregation, and not Lisa working for Murphy and Dittenhafer. I completely echo what Pat is saying about it being a full, year-round facility. I think that would be wonderful. I'd love more than anything to know what the difference in cost would be between it being 9 months versus a year. And we could always talk about how to think about that. And that's the last from me.
Jeff is over here rolling his eyes because he knows that doing that would add substantial costs. But I mean, it's not. I guess we need to get to the point where we have some real numbers that we can work with, so we can come back to you to go to the next step. I'm sorry. Yes.
I just wanted to say this is beautiful. It's a lot more than I was thinking that we were doing. I was really happy with the tent, and I was thinking the pavilion. I was thinking like a roof and cement and picnic tables is what I was thinking. So depending on how this all works out, I mean, this is lovely, but if we needed to cut back, I would still be delighted. Like, I don't think, I'm kind of different, I don't think we need to force
With
it.
just you'd be okay with picnic tables and an open, just an open pavilion?
With
Right.
backing off if this was too much.
Understood, yeah. And we could, we could just buy a tent. It's another option. Joking. Barry? Oh, Rose, I'm sorry.
I guess I just want to reiterate, I support this, I think it's a beautiful space, it's different from what I envisioned when I heard the word pavilion, but I still think it's a beautiful space, and I'm sitting here all excited about how a building like this could be used, and would be used. It's exciting. So I'm eager to hear what happens next.
I guess my thought is that if you have all the garage doors up, it sort of feels like the old school pavilion, yet it offers you much more functionality and purpose if we have the option to close them. We probably want to wrap this up. People are probably getting hungry. Barry, you're agreeing or you have a question?
I agree, but I have a question. Is it possible to start out with an open pavilion with kitchens and bathrooms, and then at a future stage, when we want to enclose it, it should be enclosed at that time?
Barry's question is, can we just start out with kitchens and bathrooms and keep the rest open and enclose it at a future time? I'm sure costs are not going to go down. We could do that. I guess our thought was we wanted to do it and do it right the first time and not, I understand the costs. I understand the risk of the cost. It will come at a substantial cost, and if we would do it that way, it could. Yes, Jeff.
So if you want to see what a pavilion with garage doors looks like, take a trip to Camp Swatara, go to the family camping center and to the G sites, and there's a pavilion back there that has a kitchen and bathrooms, not like this, but it also has garage doors. The inside is open, no finished ceiling, etc., but it gives you an idea, and it gives you a nice. No, that is not. That's the fellowship hall at Camp Swatara in the family camping center. But go to the G sites, take a trip up there, 55 minutes, and you can take a look and see what you think of it.
Right. I believe that is the Anvil. George and I took a field trip to Anvil last year, and that's where that's actually where we came up with the size as well. 40 by 80 approximate kitchen bathroom sizes. That seemed like a good size. Are there any other questions before Lowell?
As far as location, how many trees get moved?
How many trees get moved? Probably a couple, but not many. I don't believe the plan was to really take down trees. Maybe.
If any trees get removed, it's not because of the location of the building. It would be the sewer, running the sewer there, I think. Am I right about that? Sewer and walkway. But I'd love to work around the trees. Kurt doesn't agree with me on that, but I said I'd love to keep all the trees.
No, I'm fine with keeping all the trees. I just don't want to plant more trees. Rafi, you had... The problem, planting trees is wonderful, except someone has to take care of the trees, and we're not always so good at doing that. Yes, Greg? Unless Greg is volunteering his time.
Where would the sewer run from? Is it coming from the street?
We most likely would take it across. When we did our sewer project last year, Jeff had a great plan to add a...
Positive that we can come across and tie into our existing sewer lateral, which saves us tens of thousands of dollars.
All right, I think we'll wrap it up. Like I said before, the purpose of hiring Lisa's firm was that we we needed to get to the point where we can actually put this out to bid and get a real number. At that point, we'd, I guess, have a council meeting, or we'd obviously discuss it in board and try to figure out a way forward from there. If the cost is too much and we decide to do something bare bones, I guess we could step back. But we just wanted to get to this point where we can present you with this finished product. So I'm not sure what's our time frame.
Right now, our time frame is to get to 50% CDs, which encompasses schematic design and design development, to an extent where Jeff can take it and price it to kind of get, something at least close. And then once it's approved, then we would move on to taking it further. And I wanted to say, too, when I took this proposal to my boss, he looked at it right away and said, this isn't a pavilion, it's a building. So I'm hearing that, too.
Yes, thank you all for coming, and we'll hopefully have more for you soon. If you have any other further questions, feel free to stick around. Thank you, everyone up there, for sticking around. Appreciate it.